name is Tyler Perez. Today I'm going to be talking about Pentecost. Pentecost was a Jewish feast held by the Jews. It was also held 50 days after the Passover, which is Easter for us. Pentecost was usually around the time of the Feast of Weeks. That was also another feast, another celebration with the Jews. They would celebrate it because of Moses' commandment to them in Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 10. And that was another tradition for the Jews. And Passover was also 50 days before Pentecost, like I mentioned earlier. Passover was a time of harvest for the Jews because of the crops in that time. Passover was usually around spring, and Pentecost was a time of ending the springtime. Pentecost was also usually held in Jerusalem, the holy city for the Hebrew people. Now, Jerusalem was founded in 1000 BCE, and Solomon, he built his first temple in Jerusalem at 970 BCE, and it's sad because Babylon came to Israel and took over Solomon's temple. At that time, it was the king Nebuchadnezzar, something like that. And that was in that time he was reigning in Babylon, and they took it over. Jerusalem was always not weak, but taken over by the Roman Empire and the Ottoman Empire. They usually would take turns taking over the Jewish people. And in that time, Pilate, as you know, was getting ready. He was in charge of the Jewish people in the time of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. But back to Pentecost. Again, we all know what happened in Acts 2, verse 1 through 4. The disciples, including the 11 disciples, was in a room, and the doors were shut, and the windows was blinded up, and a voice from heaven, much like a strong wind, came, and all of Jerusalem heard this strong wind and came running in to the place where they heard the wind. Now the 11 disciples and other worshippers that was in the house all received the Holy Spirit and started speaking in unknown languages. Every single one of them had a flame over their head, a small flame over their head, and began to speak unknown languages. Now when they came in, when the people that heard the wind came in, they all was amazed and perplexed that action was happening, that everyone was speaking in tongues. They couldn't comprehend what was going on. And that day, Jews, Cretans, and other religions that was dwelling in Jerusalem at the time, some put their faith in Jesus Christ, and they believed what Peter mentioned, while others were mocking the people that were speaking in tongues because they thought that they was drunk off of wine. And Peter strongly and boldly stood up and said, "No, these people are not drunk, but they are filled with the Holy Spirit." And ever since then, that's been the upbringing of the church. 3,000 people were saved that day, and ever since that day, on Pentecost, that was the birthday of the early Christians and us.